Good evening, folks, family, friends, loved ones, enemies, frenemies, wizards, witches, muggles, mudbloods, people of Middle Earth, to another episode of Disguised Coverage, part of the Cover One Sports Network, the only podcast in existence, I promise you this, that gives you an equal amount of blueberries in each muffin. I hope everyone knows what movie that's from now because I've said it 4 weeks in a row. Find me on Twitter at pro__ant. That's pro, 2 underscores, ANT. And you may notice for the second week in a row, I'm a little more subdued with this intro. And the reason I'm more subdued is because this is another serious week for myself, for the Buffalo Bills. The divisional round of the playoffs last week was big time. The Patriots, we hate them. Wild card round, it's the playoffs, survive and advance, do or die, sudden death, whatever verbiage or phrase you want to go with. It was important. Now we move on to the divisional round. And this is an even bigger matchup. One, because it's the next round of the playoffs, right? Two, it's against arguably still the best team in football. It is against, until they get knocked out, it is against the Kings, the reigning champions of the AFC, a team that got the better of the Bills twice last year, including the AFC Championship. It's a game that is going to feature 2 high-powered offenses, star power, good coaching, really strong fan bases, a tough atmosphere. So I'm not as jovial because I'm focused and I'm intense. And because I'm focused and intense, I wanted to make sure I brought on a guest that could match that focus and intensity from a knowledge standpoint, because you know what we like to do on Disguised Coverage: matchups, breakdowns, analysis, what matters most, film, stats, metrics, context, putting all of that together. And that's the kind of guest I found for who I wanted for this episode. And so without further ado, let's bring him to the show. I'm going to pull the banner up there so everybody can see. I know I'm awesome with intros. Welcome, Mr. Matt Lane from the KC Sports Network and the KC Laboratory. I got his Twitter handle down there at the bottom. Matt, what I always like to tell people, whether it's just to stay up on knowledge of opponents or just football in general, I think it's always great for members of teams' fan base to follow people from other fan bases, just to stay up on football, but also get insider knowledge in terms of what other teams are doing. You are one of the best going for the Kansas City Chiefs. Your team is fantastic. I'm pumped to have you here. Thank you so much. Yeah, welcome, man.
And thank you for asking me. Like, I got to start by, first of all, saying thank you. Like, I've been kind of following a lot of the Cover One stuff for a while now, and just like all the different people that have been contributing there, they've kind of helped a lot get to where when we created KCSN, KC Sports Network, they kind of not necessarily played a huge role in it, but like we looked at it and we saw what was happening there. Like, I think we can do something similar to that in Kansas City. We kind of started with building blocks for that. So like, I've followed your guys' stuff forever. I got that message from you the other day and I was like, oh man, I don't have a voice today. So I'm really excited. I'm so disappointed I have to say no now, because like this is like one of the podcasts like I would love to go on, but like it came back today. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me, because there's not another like podcast out there for any specific team that I know of that we can talk, just this much about football, just in terms of scheme and X's and O's, that I feel like we can get so far into it with just about any other team out there right now.
That's awesome. And I appreciate the kind words. And yeah, you guys are phenomenal over there. For everybody watching, you guys remember, I had Ken Swanson on from the KC Sports Network back in week 5. Matt is part of that team. He does the show with Kent and Craig, and they are phenomenal. And yeah, a little peek behind the scenes. I was messaging with Matt, and he was like, dude, I'd love to come on, but like my voice isn't so great. So like if my voice is good, like then I'm good. I'll let you know in the morning. And so I woke up and I was just like, do I DM him? Do I wait for him to DM me? But he was up and at it early. He got his voice back, and here we are. This is a big week. Like, let's start with a general thing, right? How are you? I'm extremely anxious. I'm paranoid. I'm nervous. I'm excited, but like I'm anxious. I'm giddy all the time. I feel like I'm jittery, and I haven't had any coffee. So it's just pure emotion for this upcoming game. How do you feel as a person who obviously loves the Kansas City Chiefs, but also covers them objectively? What are your initial raw thoughts going into this game?
It's such a roller coaster for me, because for the past few years, the Chiefs have been so good that like it almost feels like every single week up until this point, up until you get to the divisional round or even the conference championship game, it's just kind of been just another week as a Chiefs fan these past few years. And so throughout the season, I love the NFL draft too. And so like I find myself after like week 7, I'm like, okay, I care a little bit more about the draft right now than who the Chiefs are playing in week 10 or 11. Like, it just doesn't matter. And then we get to the playoffs. It's like, okay, now these are the big games. Like I spent all day yesterday, no matter what I was doing, I had no voice, so I couldn't do much else. I'm just sitting there trying to watch all of the Bills film that I can and see what I can take out of it. It's like, I'm so excited for the matchup. And then so 1 hour, I'm super not confident, but like I'm feeling good about the Chiefs. And then the next hour, I'm like, man, this might be the year where it just isn't happen again. And then the next, I was like, well, it's going to be a really good game. So I'm just all over the place at any given time right now. And I think that goes to show you like how even these two teams can be if they're playing, their best football right now.
That's such a big piece of it too. Like we're obviously super jacked up as, people who cover the Bills and the Chiefs and fans of those teams, but just from a pure football perspective, this has like, I tweeted it out and I didn't even just say it just for like the sake of hyperbole. This has game of the year potential written all over it, especially when you add in the week 5 piece where the Bills go into Kansas City. I don't want to say stomp, but they win handedly.
You can say it.
Appreciate it. So they stomp Kansas City. Kansas City knows that. Bills still know that they lost in Kansas City last year. So now you've still got the Bills who still have a chip on their shoulder. Kansas City probably has a chip on their shoulder because they're like, nah, these guys came in, they did this to us. And also my big thing with Kansas City this whole year, and even especially as of late, there's been a lot of issues with the Kansas City tackling piece. And I felt like Kansas City, maybe in the beginning of the year, and definitely I feel like towards the end, I feel like they had a little bit of that Golden State Warriors malaise where it was like, let's just get to the playoffs and we'll turn it on once we get to the playoffs. And I don't want to say that they took it easy during certain stretches, but I still know that team that can just boat race people on both sides of the ball. That team is still in there inside the Kansas City Chiefs. And the Bills boat race the Patriots. They've had to be strong down the stretch. I feel like both of these teams come in riding some decent momentum, riding some high highs, and then they also come in with chips on their shoulders. I'm pretty confident, in saying that neither of these teams really like each other. They might respect each other, but they don't really like each other. There's like a little bit of bad blood to a degree. So there's just, and as if you needed anything to heighten the emotion and the intensity. And so, yeah, it's a roller coaster of emotion. It's a roller coaster of feelings. But we're going to dive right into the first thing I really want to talk about, and, the matchups that'll decide this game. And for everybody watching, Matt's going to be on. We're going to go over different things from the Chiefs' perspective, game plan, and all that stuff. And then whenever Matt doesn't want to be here anymore, he'll leave. And then I'll finish towards the back end of the show like I always do. But what I want to start with is the defensive side of the ball for the Chiefs, right? Because this was a unit, I think it's still a unit that people like to talk about as if it's absolutely horrible. They finished in 24th overall in DVOA. I'm big into DVOA, but people don't look into the weighted DVOA piece where they're 13th towards the back end of the stretch. Like they had a solid run. They had a really good performance against Dallas, and they've strung some pieces together, but they've still had some ups and downs. But the big thing with the defense for me is it's just, to me, it's a much different unit than it was in week 5. You have Chris Jones coming back, who arguably was the most impressive player for Kansas City in the AFC Championship last year, just destroyed the Bills' offensive line, constantly just driving John Feliciano back over and over. Charvarius Ward did not play in week 5. He's back. You have the addition of Melvin Ingram. You've got more of an incorporation of Juan Thornhill into the mix and less of Sorensen, who I know is just not great sometimes. And to speak kind of like nice of him. But I just feel like it's a much different defense than the one the Bills saw in week 5. So let's talk about that overall, and then we'll talk about each of those guys. Where does this Chiefs defense stand? What's the state? Is it back to being a unit that you feel confident in watching week in and week out?
Oh man, that's such a loaded question.
Sorry.
No, you're good. For the playoffs, yes. It's Steve Spagnuolo, whatever he's got going on with this Chiefs defense right now, he gets them up for the playoffs. Once the playoffs hit, like kind of a switch flips for those guys and everything changes. So we're at that point. So yeah, I feel confident in what he's got going for the playoffs. The game script is going to be very detailed to who they're playing. There's going to be exotic stuff. You're going to see a little bit of everything. So like, I feel good about that. I still think there are some issues. Like you mentioned the tackling earlier. It was a lot better during the middle of the year when the defense was turning it up, when that defense kind of did need to step up and they started to turn the corner. The tackling was significantly better. Like they really did get a lot better. Then it tailed off towards the end of the year. As you said, it almost looked like they were just kind of coasting to get to the playoffs.
Especially in that Bengals game. It just seemed like they were kind of pulling up like anytime they were just like, eh.
Yeah, there was a lot of that. And I think that was one of the ones I kind of saw for that. We're just in the Broncos game at the end of the year where, yes, they're still playing for the 2 seed, possibly the 1 seed, but like you can get that one. But even the Bengals game, it was almost as if the guys knew an extra week of football. And they're just like, you know what? Like, yeah, we'll go throw a shoulder into him, but we're not trying to really hit that 200-pound brick wall of a receiver that's going to run us over in Jamar Chase. So like, I get it, but there's some concerns there. I will say this though, like, I don't want to take anything away from what the Bills did to the Chiefs in week 5. They beat the brakes off of them. They really did. The defense that the Chiefs put out there though in week 5, I mean, it's just nothing close to what they have now. Almost every single level of that defense is different now. That like, and I'm sure the Bills are entirely different from what I've seen from them too. But like, I don't know if either team will be relying a lot on what happened in that game to kind of predict or to see what the other team's going to do going forward. Because just so much for the Chiefs defensively, especially, has changed since then.
I love that point. I see so many fans, especially from a Bills perspective, that are coming into this game with like, well, look what we did in week 5. So like, I'm not worried. And I was like, that's a completely different, to take a previous game in general and think that that's going to be the same outcome. For me, I just don't think that's, a solid way to approach a game, let alone week 5. These are, like you said, they're two completely different teams. Like the units are operating completely different. And, just from guys who are back, we'll start with Chris Jones. There's been so much. Actually, we'll start with Jones and Ingram, together because I feel like they've impacted one another. Jones, I think, has been one of the best defensive players in football the last several years, and he's a game wrecker at times. I mentioned how impactful he was in the AFC Championship last year, and I know he comes into this year, had some injuries, and then they also had moved him outside on the edge a little more. Melvin Ingram comes in. He's starting to do Melvin Ingram things, but that's also allowed Jones to kick inside a little bit more. Now he's doing regular Chris Jones things that we're used to seeing. Let's talk about, you mentioned the improvement on all the levels. Let's start on that defensive line level. What are Chris Jones and Ingram doing for this defensive line? And I guess Frank Clark, he's still an impact player there. Let's talk about that D line, with the focus on Jones and Ingram and how things are different versus that week 5 game.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you mentioned Frank Clark because in that week 5 game, everyone talks about Chris Jones not being there and Melvin Ingram not being there for that game. That was Frank Clark's first game back from injury, and the Chiefs had to thrust him into play 80% of the snaps as well. Like they put him out there immediately off of a hamstring injury. I think he played a little bit in like week 3 and then missed week 4, then came back. But anyway, he wasn't 100%. And yeah, I would say he's played arguably his best year in Kansas City this year. The stats might not say it, but just watching him, he looks the most powerful. He looks the strongest that he ever has in Kansas City. He dealt with some weight issues throughout the other couple seasons. He looks a little bit better this year. So you add him, then you get Melvin Ingram to go opposite him. So now all of a sudden you have those two bookends. This is something that Steve Spagnuolo's defense, going all the way back to his first stint with the Giants, like that's kind of where his defense starts up front. He wants those two defensive ends that can play the run and play the pass and do a little bit of everything. You now get to put Chris Jones back in the middle, who is, for my money, maybe I'm a homer, maybe I'm not. He's the second best interior pass rusher in the NFL, and I don't even think it's close. Like,
I think that's fair.
I think he's closer to Donovan than he is to whoever's number 3. Like, he's that good as a pass rusher. You can catch him as a run defender, no problems there. But as a pass rusher, there's nobody in the NFL that's going to block him one-on-one consistently. So now that you get him on the inside, if you are going to give extra help there, if you are going to, slide your protection, you're going to try to take care of him with an extra body, you're leaving Frank Clark and Melvin Ingram one-on-one on the outside, and neither guy are dominant, but they can be good enough on any given rep to, mess up that play. And they can chain a couple plays together like that. So the synergy between those guys, and we haven't even mentioned him, Jaron Reed's a guy that's had 10 sacks in the NFL as well. He's lumped in there on that defensive line. Now, all of a sudden, he's getting even less attention because he's playing next to Chris Jones. It has been such an upward trajectory of these guys since they got Melvin Ingram. And he's been great, but I think it's just more of you've put so much talent across that defensive line now. It's really hard to isolate any specific person if you're an offense to figure out how to attack them, how to take care of them. And it's just any given week, one of these guys is going to make a couple big plays.
That's a really good way to put it. And I also think from like a Spagnuolo perspective and like what they're trying to do defensively, I've watched at this point a pretty sizable amount of Chiefs games from the tape and the all 22. And I feel like just especially in that beginning of the year, when they really were trying to generate pressure, they had to blitz so much more and they had to commit more up front. Yep, they had to because they just didn't have the horses up front. And now all of a sudden, like, you've got Frank Clark on one end, you've got Melvin Ingram on the other, you got those bookends, you have, I think Chris Jones is a definite stud in the middle. And if you have somebody who can rush the passer from the interior, it's so disruptive. No quarterback ever wants to see interior pass rush, especially with the quickness that guys like Chris Jones and Aaron Donald have. We've seen it several times this year from a Bills perspective with Ed Oliver. When he's on, he's just a game wrecker up front. When you've got that defensive tackle or that interior defensive lineman who can generate pass rush inside, it's so disruptive. And Now you combine that with not having to blitz as much and you can play more coverage. And now you've got plus matchups from a coverage perspective because you only have to rush 4 or even maybe 3 sometimes. You don't have to commit so much to the blitz. And then it also allows you to get more creative when you do blitz, because then when you bring blitzes, they're more exotic, they're different looks. So that's a big one for me. That's one of the biggest things I'm mostly worried about Tre'Davious White not being there and then how that affects the Chiefs offense, which we're going to get to the Chiefs offense in a minute. But right there, number 2, is that return of Chris Jones and what that D-line looks like. And, staying with the defensive side of the ball, I mentioned it earlier. I want to talk about the secondary. So Juan Thornhill, somebody who I really liked last year. I liked him coming out of college, but he was a bit in the doghouse. Like I guess kind of put it in the beginning of the year, wasn't playing great. And to go through his snaps, so week 1 versus Cleveland, 56. Then week 2 versus Baltimore, 11. Week 3 versus the Chargers, 19. Week 4 versus Philly, 31. Week 5 versus the Bills, 25. So not a ton of snaps. Since week 5, playing the Buffalo Bills, he's had no week where he's had less than 48 snaps, and including the wildcard game, he's averaging 59.6 snaps a game. Juxtapose that with Mr. Sorensen, who we mentioned. He started out, I see you already roll your eye. He started out so hot. Man. Dude, I don't get it. And he started out so hot. So same numbers. Week 1 against Cleveland, 60 snaps. Week 2, 76 against Baltimore. Week 3 versus the Chargers, 60. Week 4 versus Philly, 73. Week 5 versus the Bills, 57. But then to juxtapose it again with Thornhill, since week 5 against the Bills, Thornhill seeing 59.6 snaps per game. Sorensen is seeing 31.5 snaps per game. We've seen his usage decrease. Let's talk about that safety position. I think everyone knows Tyrann Mathieu, jack of all trades, can line up deep, line up in the box, line up in the nickel spot, cover man, cover zone. He can blitz, do whatever you want. But let's talk about what Thornhill adds and how him seeing more snaps has changed the dynamic on the back end a little bit for Kansas City.
Yeah, and so kind of to go into why Sorensen was playing, I think this is something that gets a little misconstrued because not everybody follows, the Chiefs day in and day out. So Dan Sorensen was playing because he understands the entire defense, and he has been here for a while. Even during their Super Bowl run, during last year when they were getting back to the Super Bowl, Sorensen played a very vital role. He understands everything. He was better in years past. I'm not going to say simply he's been bad this year. Like, he's making mistakes this year that he hadn't made in years past. So the move to get away from him had to happen. But Juan Thornhill was dealing with some confidence issues, I think, working back from his injury late in the 2019 season. He just wasn't playing as aggressively, and that really showed up in the run game. And Steve Spagnuolo hates to be run on. He does not like to be run on. Point. So when Juan Thornhill had to come up and run the alley, there was some hesitancy. He was late to do it frequently early in the year, and so I think that's why Dan Sorensen was out there. Now, obviously, eventually the mistakes became too abundant. You had to flip it back, and Juan Thornhill's been playing great. Like, those things have kind of reverted back to what he was as a rookie. Now he's playing really good. So now you get Juan Thornhill out there. What he does, though, for this defense, more so than anything else, Tyrann Mathieu's that jack of all trades. He can do a little bit of everything. But the one thing that Tyrann Mathieu's never really been great at, he's not going to play, a deep single high spot. He's not going to play your center field role and show a ton of range. Juan Thornhill can. Now, he's not as fast as he once was. It doesn't seem like he still does not seem to have that same pre-injury speed, but he still can do it better than anybody else. So he gives the Chiefs that kind of ability to play a little bit better, single high coverage. They don't have to sit with too high all the time or do these late rotations where they're dropping, their slot back to play a deep half or whatever it may be. He just allows them to be a little bit more varied on the back end. That's something they were missing to start the year when they were playing Tyrann Mathieu and Dan Sorensen so much, because neither one of those guys are covering much ground at all across the back end. So that Juan Thornhill switch right there allows him to be more varied. Now you get to put Dan Sorensen when he's on the field. He gets lined up a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage. Now, I don't think he's a good run defender either. Like, don't get me wrong, but he's a good blitzer. Dan Sorensen's an excellent blitzer. That's where Steve Spagnuolo wants to put him. If he can put him on the line of scrimmage and say, hey, you're going to take the running back to the flat, you're going to blitz, we're going to make it really confusing. That's where he's at his best. His role's got to be so limited right now to make an impact. So Juan Thornhill's kind of reemergence has allowed the Chiefs to utilize him better. But as everyone saw against the Bengals, teams are still finding a way to attack Dan Sorensen when he makes it out there. And that's what the Chiefs got to be careful of.
When I think of Sorensen, I think of him getting beat by Diggs on that bomb in the middle of the field, and Tyrann Mathieu's just in the middle, throwing his hands up like, dude. And then I think it was the first Bengals touchdown. I think the Chiefs are running like they're like cover two kind of trap, and Sorensen just does not take a good angle, and Chase is just wide open. Sorensen like almost undercuts it too much, and you're like, how the hell did Chase get so wide open? And it's like, oh, because Dan Sorensen is horrible deep. And yeah, I just think of that, and the emergence of Juan Thornhill is a big one for me for the Chiefs because I mean, teams play a lot of nickel. They use a lot of defensive backs nowadays because of the nature of the NFL and a passing league. But the Chiefs, 72% of their defensive snaps this year have come with 5+ defensive backs on the field, including several of those with 6 DBs, so rolling like dime looks. So having a safety like Juan Thornhill, again, being able to drop deep, and then you have those guys like Matthew and Sorensen who are more suited to be, especially Sorensen, closer to the line and around the box. But then it allows Matthew to just do, I don't want to say, but like the proverbial honey badger type of role where he goes everywhere. You don't know what he's doing. Who's he going to line up on? What's his responsibility? He just gets to function free because you've got somebody on that back. And then you combine it with how much they like to go with DBs back there. And yeah, his emergence has been something. And I like how you mentioned, confidence issues with him, kind of filling the alley and making sticks. It didn't seem like that against Pittsburgh because he came up and stuck Najee Harris multiple times. So he seems like he's back. Which is good for him. I hate to see dudes struggle with confidence issues. I hope he struggles with confidence issues this week because I don't want to see the Chiefs win, but to each his own. I hope he prospers in other areas of life, just not this week. And then also staying with that secondary, Charvarius Ward, he did not play in week 5. I like both of the corners. I like Snead. I love the year that he had, coming out of nowhere, out of Louisiana Tech and just playing really well last year. And you've got him and Ward. They both fit Spagnuolo's defense, but let's talk about that. What does Ward add to this Chiefs defense, and how important of an impact, or I should say, how important was his absence in week 5, and what should we expect to see this time around?
So Charvarius Ward's playing his best football in a contract year. Contract year's undefeated, so you're getting the best version of Charvarius Ward you're ever going to get right now. And the biggest thing for him is he's a bigger, stronger, long corner. He likes to press guys. He gets his hands on guys at the line of scrimmage. Mm-hmm. That's where he makes his bread and butter. The Chiefs don't ask him to run with guys horizontally very much. They're matching most things. If not, it's going to be a cover 0 play where you're not really anticipating a whole lot, the ball to be held on too long. So they don't want him trailing somebody everywhere across the entire field. But when you slap him on that vertical plane and just say, be physical, just turn and run vertically, he's been really good this year. Outside of that Bengals game against, Jamar Chase, he's been excellent playing the ball downfield, which has been one of his biggest weaknesses his entire career. His ball skills have been almost non-existent. He's always in great position, but he's really struggled to play the ball over his shoulder. Up until that Bengals game, that had kind of changed this year. He made multiple pass breakups, came down with a couple interceptions where you like, oh, he's finally turned the corner. He's finally figured out how to track the ball, how to read the receiver and everything. And then the Jamar Chase game came, and Jamar Chase just essentially bullied him out of every single football.
Yeah.
But I will say this to Charvarius Ward's going to benefit. Jamar Chase is excellent at that. He's got them short little arms. Nobody sees him push off anymore.
No, he did it against the Raiders 75 times and nobody cared.
Right. That's what it is. Everybody talked about his short arms being a problem in the NFL, but all it means is he can push off and no one sees it because they can't see the little arms.
He's got those little T-Rex arms.
He got bullied a little bit there, but he's played great. So this gives the Chiefs a guy that they clearly see as their cornerback one. L'Jarius Sneed, I think every Chiefs fan would say they think he's better, but he's the guy they like to play in the slot. They like to, they like to get him involved in the run, to blitz. So he's going to play out of the slot unless they're in base. Charvarius Ward's their predominant outside corner. Maybe not the best speed, but he's willing to get physical and squeeze guys into the boundaries. That does give them somebody they feel confident to match up with anybody. Not saying he won't get beat, but they have the confidence to try to match him up one-on-one with somebody. They don't feel like they have to give him help every single play, even if some games they should have to. So that allows them to be a little bit just more versed in everything else that they do because of just how they're going to play. They don't have to sit in a specific coverage to protect them like they did in years past. He's playing really good. So I'm interested to see. I think Stephon Diggs is a nightmare matchup for him. I'm going to be honest. I think the way Stephon Diggs plays, his route running and how quick he is, that's a bad matchup for Charvarius Ward. I will say I like him versus Gabe Davis. I think that's a better matchup for Charvarius Ward. Just it fits his play style a little bit better when they're matched up. So I'll be interested to see if they let Charvarius Ward travel with Diggs. They let him travel with Chase Claypool when the Steelers kept him on the outside. Mm-hmm. He clearly traveled with Jamar Chase along the outside a lot. It's they will move him around. It's just, it depends. It seems kind of matchup dependent. I think Diggs is going to present a lot of problems for the Chiefs corners because just nobody has that kind of physical profile to keep up with him super well.
let's wrap up the piece on the D here. I love how you started talking about what you expect to see from traveling and types of coverage. Like let's stick with that. What do you expect to see from the Chiefs on the back end? Do you expect to see man? If you're expecting zone, what kind? What type of coverage schemes, do you expect from the Chiefs in this game? Maybe are they going to try and bracket Diggs? What do you expect from them on the back end heading into this game?
I think you're gonna get a lot of two high shells. I think you will get, the Chiefs have played a pretty substantial amount actually of two man this year, which is a pretty big change up from the previous couple seasons. Like I said, I think that goes to show you that they feel a little bit more confident in the way some of those corners are playing. They're not just asking to run that vertical plane. So you're gonna get a lot of two man. You're going to get a lot of quarters looks. Like they will throw plenty of, 2 read, 4 read, whatever you want to mix up in there. They'll try to trap stuff if you're hitting a lot of hitches. So they're going to give you a lot of different looks, but I think they'll base mostly out of that kind of 2 high shell. The issue that you're going to have with the Chiefs, though, is trying to narrow it down is Tyrann Mathieu does so much based on instinct that it's really hard sometimes to pin down where he's supposed to be versus where he ends up. Like
he's got that Troy Polamalu impact from back in the day with the Steelers. Yeah.
It's sometimes like I'll go back and watch a play. I'm like, okay, there's a lot of space over here that nobody's looking at. I wonder if he's supposed to be there and trying to piece out what he's trying to see there. So that's where it gets hard. And then,
you're trying to watch film and figure out coverages, and you're like, what is going on? Like Tyrann Mathieu just wrecked my whole train of thought in terms of what they're trying to do here.
Right. And it happens so often. And then you get Steve Spagnuolo. So all of a sudden I'm watching, and now there's multiple times when they just have 3 guys just change, like trade roles around in a complete triangle. Post snap, they'll just all of a sudden linebacker runs out to the flat defender goes deep, safety comes down to cut something. I'm like, all right, I'm going to have fun charting all of these things. So it is hard to figure out. I do think you're going to get a good Steve Spagnuolo game. Like that's where I would have to start. It's like Steve Spagnuolo is going to come out with every trick that he has. So that's what's going to be interesting to watch.
Oh, that's another piece too. Like that coaching piece just, and I feel like a lot of people start with Andy Reid, but the coordinators for Kansas City are fantastic. Spags is so well-versed and experienced, and he's got championships and such a great pedigree. I genuinely don't know how Eric Bieniemy is not a head coach at this point. I don't get how he's still just running a tremendous offense, being fantastic as the offensive coordinator for the Chiefs. I thought for sure last year was it, and he was going to be gone. I don't get it, but the coordinator piece, and then obviously tying in to Andy Reid, they're just so good as a coaching staff, and then the on the field piece. And I love that you mentioned Spags. Like I think that's huge in terms of having a veteran defensive coordinator who knows how to game plan really well, especially against players that he's seen multiple times in the span of a couple years. Saw Josh Allen twice last year, saw him already this year. He's got plenty of tape. He's got plenty of know-how, even though this Bills offense is a little different than it was in week 5. Yeah, that coaching piece is going to be huge. Now let's flip to the offensive side of the ball. We're not going to start with Patrick Mahomes. I want to start with someone else. I want to start with Jerick McKinnon. There's a lot of buzz about Jerick McKinnon. Yep. See the face that you made? You pursed your lips because you're excited about him. And you made the opposite face. Yeah, he's fun. You made the opposite face for Sorensen. Sorensen, you were like, oh, Jerick McKinnon, you're like, oh. So McKinnon, I really liked him even when he was a backup in Minnesota. Goes to San Francisco. He's getting paid RB1 money. He gets hurt, but he's diverse. He's versatile. He can catch the ball. He can run. He had some juice to that backfield. And he's someone who weeks 1 through 4, he only had 19 snaps. And then his season high totals the rest of the year, week 5, he had 27 snaps. Week 6, he had 23. Week 7, he had 22. Week 18 versus Denver, he had 23. And then boop, in the wild card, 51 snaps. We saw a ton of Jerick McKinnon. He adds another dynamic to this offense. Let's start there. Is his addition and what we saw in the wild card game, is that something to expect going forward in this game, or was it just a one-off piece? What does that running back rotation look like for Kansas City?
I'm crossing my fingers that this was some kind of Andy Reid master plan to save it for the playoffs and just drop it on everybody here when you have to. But
I like that.
The Chiefs, Clyde Edwards-Helaire was inactive for that Steelers game. Darrell Williams has a toe injury. And so when he was first got out there warming up, he couldn't cut the way that he wanted to. So that could have played a role in the Jerick McKinnon getting all the carries. But you could see there was clearly something working there. There was something different. This Chiefs team that won the Super Bowl had Damian Williams at running back. And I don't think he was a great running back. They essentially ran outside zone 15 times a game with him. Yeah. And your only hope was that he was going to hit one lane and get one 60-yard run out of it. And he did it enough that it mattered. And you saw it in the playoffs, especially. You saw it a couple times throughout the year. That's what Jerick McKinnon brought to this team. The only difference is this offensive line might be better than what it was then. So now all of a sudden you have that speed, but you have an offensive line that can create holes. You can now all of a sudden you're not, getting 2 yards on every other run. You're getting 4 yards, 5 yards, and you still have that speed to bust it. So what McKinnon did in that Steelers game especially is something the Chiefs haven't done all year. He was actively looking for and hitting some cutback lanes. So when they're running your inside zone to the right, he was getting back to the left-hand side. He was getting back to the left A gap frequently. And I don't think the Steelers defense was ready for that. You could see all their linebackers, they were coming in, they're trying to spill everything to the outside.
Yeah.
And these guys are just driving into that gap immediately. And McKinnon's like, oh, okay, I'll just go the other direction now because you're way out of place. That's not something that Darrell Williams, Derek Gore, who's been fun for the Chiefs, but not really, that's not their style of play. Yeah. And so I think that paired with his ability to just bounce plays outside, if you're going to lose contain on him, he can outrun you to the sideline. Again, something else the rest of these running backs can't do. So he can all of a sudden outrun you to the sideline, or he's going to take advantage if you over pursue. Like, just that style of run was something I don't think those Steelers linebackers were ready for, and they really took advantage of it. I mean, they only ran the ball like 11 times or whatever, but they still took advantage of it when they did.
Yeah, you were almost spot on. He had 12. He was in there for 12 run snaps, 39 pass snaps, 4 of them pass block reps. So again, just a dude who's a jack of all trades, as if like the Chiefs needed another like speedy, versatile piece on their stupid offense. Let's go to the quarterback position. Patrick Mahomes. Everybody wants to make it Mahomes versus Allen, Allen versus Mahomes, so on and so forth. I feel like a lot of people are down on Mahomes this year because of the quote unquote down year that he's had, because of what his standards are, because of the bar that's been set, where everybody expects every year he's going to throw 50 touchdowns with 5 interceptions and like 4,900 yards. Everybody just expects the world. But I think it's so funny too with how the Bills and Chiefs are. I feel like they were fated and destined to play in the playoffs again. And I also think it's funny how both offenses, I don't want to say struggled, but things were difficult for both offenses in the early part of the year. It seemed like both the Chiefs and the Bills were trying to squeeze blood from a stone. They were both inefficient, and they were seeing similar looks in coverage. They were seeing a lot of too high looks pre and post snap. They were seeing a lot of zone, and it's funny how, these type of offenses that are explosive and built to go vertical all of a sudden kind of, were made to be inefficient a little bit. But at the end of the day, for me, Mahomes is still Mahomes. I think they've course corrected a lot of things. So let's talk about that. Mahomes in this passing attack for the Chiefs. I know it's been a quote unquote, again, down year, but what's the state of Patrick Mahomes in this Chiefs offense from a passing, attack perspective coming into this game? What do you expect from Mahomes? What have you seen from him? And just how much of a quote unquote down year is he having?
So it started out definitely as a down year. Like, I don't want to say it wasn't. There was a lot of bad luck with tip stuff and things like that to start the year, but it was definitely below what you come to expect out of him. And not even just like looking at the ridiculous, record setting high and stuff, but even just from top 3 quarterback play in the NFL, he wasn't giving you that consistently to start the year. Now, part of it was the Chiefs offense changed a little bit. They changed wide receiver coaches. They got a few other stuff going in on there. So all of a sudden they're running a bunch of option routes with receivers like Byron Pringle, McCole Hardman, Demarcus Robinson, and that their timing was a little bit off with Mahomes. He wasn't trusting this offensive line that had 5 new starters in at the time. So he's trying to rush through his progressions. He's trying to get the ball out or scramble immediately. Okay. Like, there was just so many new parts going into the offense to start the year that nothing was like in sync. That's changed now. Now, all of a sudden, all this stuff's in sync. They've gotten back to a little bit more of what that kind of offense was in the years past. Now, all of a sudden, instead of running all these option routes, you're getting mesh. You're getting these shallow crossers. You're getting them running, these slant flat RPOs rather than just trying to run all these little comeback spacing routes over the middle of the field. They've kind of got back to what worked before. And then I think you kind of seen the uptick in the Chiefs offense since then. And then I think the biggest thing, if you look at the Steelers game specifically, they're letting Mahomes play a little bit more how he wants to. There was like this push in the middle of the year or towards the beginning of the year to make him play from the pocket and accept, we just spent a lot of resources on this interior offensive line. You don't have to scramble all the time. You have a clean pocket, step up into it, and you could still see there was some uncomfortability there. Like, he didn't feel great doing it. Now it's either he's feeling better, they've given him the green light, but you see him not necessarily scrambling, but just moving a little bit more. He trusts that pocket a little bit, so he'll step up, maybe fade to the right, but he's buying that extra half second like he did so many times in years past. So now you got better, quick game, better timing passes off the rip because they're getting back to what works. And you're getting Patrick Mahomes kind of feeling his go with the flow, freestyle level of play, and it's all coming together at one point. I mean, the Bills' performance was phenomenal against the New England Patriots. It absolutely phenomenal. Then Patrick Mahomes follows it up with 5 touchdown passes in like 10.5 minutes or something like that the following night. Like, we get the most crazy back-to-back offensive performances in this wild card round of these two teams that are about to play each other. It's just like both these teams are kind of hitting everything at the right time. And I think you see it from the Chiefs in that game. Like, they understand what they do well again. And now they're starting to rely on that rather than forcing something new.
Nice. Well, nice for you, not nice for the Bills or anybody who doesn't like the Chiefs. You mentioned the offensive line. I wanted to touch on that real quick. Bills Mafia, so many of them became enamored with Creed Humphrey this past offseason, wanted him to be taken in the draft. He was not. I also really like Trey Smith. You guys took both of them. I also like Nick Bolton. You guys got Nick Bolton. But so they grabbed Creed Humphrey. They've got Trey Smith. They signed Joe Tooney. You mentioned that interior of the offensive line. Creed Humphrey's having a phenomenal year. Let's touch on that, offensive line, whether it's the interior or the O-line as a whole. How are they holding up? How are they protecting Mahomes? You mentioned him having more confidence in that line. Now, is this a solid, budding top tier unit for them? Is it something that, Bills fans should expect to be a strength for this team in this game?
I think so. Compare it to the crazy thing about the Chiefs offensive line over these past few years is they've been really good at some spots, but really bad at others. So like even going back to when they won the Super Bowl, you have Mitchell Schwartz, one of the best right tackles, if not the best right tackle when he was playing. And across, we have Eric Fisher at left tackle, who was inconsistent, but still a really good offensive tackle. But then the interior of that offensive line was just kind of pieced together most of the time. Yeah. So now you almost flip that and you put all these resources into the interior. I don't want to say Orlando Brown is just like a pieced together guy, but there's been a learning curve there. So overall, the offensive line's a strength. Like they're playing well together. They understand each other. So overall, there's a strength, but now you all of a sudden have these two offensive tackles, Orlando Brown, and then Andrew Wiley's playing right tackle again right now. These offensive tackles can lose one-on-ones, and it's not infrequent that they do get beat up the arc, and then it relies on Patrick Mahomes to have that pocket to step up into or the mobility to get away from it, because these tackles aren't guys that are going to shut good pass rushers down for 50 snaps in a game. They are going to get beat at times. What Patrick Mahomes has done really good, though, especially with Orlando Brown, he takes advantage of his size. He says, hey, you might beat my massive, Goliath of a man around the outside, but you know what you can't do? Get back across his 360-pound, 6'8" body if I step up. Like, you can't get back in front of him now that you got behind him. So they're starting to play well together. I will say they get into a lot of trouble, though, and the Titans did it early in the year, and I think you saw Alex Highsmith do it a little bit for the Steelers. If you send your left end just on a deep speed rush, 10, 11 yards deep around the arc where no tackle is going to keep up with them, if you flush Mahomes out, if you let Mahomes roll, you can just run deep off that left side and beat Orlando Brown deep around the arc. And Mahomes sometimes he'll give you a free pressure if you do that. He'll let you get him pressure from behind because you can just outrun Brown that deep, and Mahomes sometimes will hold the ball.
Nice. Very insightful. I got one last quick, I got three more questions. Secondly, two of them are quick. This last one is more structural. You mentioned RPOs and things that the Chiefs do. The Chiefs, 22% RPO usage this year, second in the entire NFL. They're also seventh in play action percentage at 20%. We know what Patrick Mahomes can do. We know what this passing attack can do, how dangerous they are. They're even more dangerous if there is the threat of the run. How good of a running game do the Chiefs have at this point? I know that was part of it in the earlier part of the year where teams were almost daring them, like, no, we're going to play these soft zones and too high. Go ahead, run it. We dare you to run it. Same thing was kind of happening to the Bills. The Bills have developed that pivot towards the back end of the year with the run game. Do the Chiefs have the same thing with the run, or is it still a work in progress?
It's still a work in progress. I don't think that they're ever, from what I've seen with the Bills, they will settle in on this run game and they will ride it until it gets stopped a little bit. I think Andy Reid will throw in one drive where they really sit down and try to run the ball. And then as soon as that drive's over, they're like, okay, we're back to throwing it over and over again. Yeah. So it's there. It can be good. The biggest issue you're going to have, and Chiefs fans are going to tell you this offensive line that we just talked about where they put it all together, fantastic gap scheme, fantastic man blockers. Okay. You start trying to run these guys on outside zone, though, it's a little bit more hit and miss. And
70% zone run rate, to mention it. They're like a predominantly zone running team, which by your eye roll, you're not a fan of.
Yeah, and it even more so than just the zone, it's the outside zone, especially when you had Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Darrell Williams. These guys aren't outside zone runners at all. and you're trying to shove them into outside zone all the time. But I get it. It works off of their RPO game. They want to live in 11 personnel with Travis Kelce,
Yep.
off the line of scrimmage. It's really hard to do anything but outside zone for your stuff out of that. Like, I get the concept, but they're so good when they run power, when they run duo, and then they just want to do this RPO game so heavy. So no, I don't think that you are going to get a repeat of, last year's regular season performance where all of a sudden Clyde Edwards-Helaire, running all over the Bills defense with backup offensive linemen stepping in, and one of the weirdest games I've ever seen for the Chiefs.
That game was terrible.
Attack.
I hate it.
It was such a weird game. Like, I don't think you're going to get that again because the Chiefs just won't really nail that down. But if you're going to give them the numbers, they will hand the ball off enough, as we kind of saw last week. And if someone like Jerick McKinnon, Darrell Williams, Clyde Edwards-Helaire gets hot, they'll ride that hot hand a little bit and pick up chunk yards out of it. And it's that gap scheme you got to look out for. They almost use their gap run scheme as like a play action pass for the run game. They'll just sprinkle it in here and there to get like a big play out of it, get a chunk play. You're going to overplay, you're going to flow fast and anything that might be outside zone. All of a sudden, here comes a counter, and they're going to hit it back the other way with some guys pulling through. So they use it in spots, and it's really effective. They just won't use it enough to, I think, take over a game.
It's so funny how, again, these two teams keep being related. Like with what you're saying there with the Chiefs and their gap run, the Bills have pivoted to this gap run scheme from weeks 14 through 18, 48% gap run usage rate, the fifth most in the NFL at that time. Like they're running old school powers and counter tray and pin and pulls from every single formation they can. And it
terrifies
the Bills. Yeah, fingers crossed. I'm hoping that it works. Sorry for you, but for me, I'm hoping that it works. But yeah, it's funny how the Chiefs are good at that, but don't use it as much, where the Bills have started to lean into it.
Yeah,
you've been absolutely tremendous. I got two more questions for you, and then we'll get you out. Okay, they're quick questions.
Okay,
finish the sentence. The Kansas City Chiefs win this game if they
can pressure Josh Allen enough to make him uneasy. And I know it's supposed to be quick. I'm a talker. I'm sorry.
No, dude, talk it up. I appreciate you.
Last time the Chiefs played, or not this year, but last year in the playoffs, Josh Allen looked, especially to start the game, just a little rattled, trying to figure out where the pressure was coming from, who was coming. He was operating quickly, didn't have to. He was slow when he needed to be fast. If Steve Spagnuolo can get that same level of confusion, bring some pressure, get in his face a little bit, I think that's where the Chiefs can slow them down enough that it should be easier for the offense to outscore them. I would really think that Steve Spagnuolo is going to be deep in that blitz arsenal that he has right now. It's like, I think that's kind of where the Chiefs defense starts in terms of slowing down the offense.
Okay, now I just want you to know, I've been pulling up several comments throughout this thing. Multiple people have said what a fantastic guest you are. And John here wanted to donate and say it as well. Yeah, you've been getting a lot of love from the chat. You've been
awesome.
Fantastic.
Well, thank you guys. I appreciate
you've been great. Now, let's see how great you're going to be, because we're going to finish up with the last question here. Flip side, the Buffalo Bills will win this game if they
get Isaiah McKenzie involved in as many ways as possible, because I don't think the Chiefs are going to have a great answer for him. From what I've seen what the Bills have been doing with him, I really don't think the Chiefs will have a great answer, whether you want to hand the ball off behind the line of scrimmage and stretch them, horizontally to the sideline. They've been using him a lot on some of these shallow or even some of these deeper intermediate crossers these last few weeks. I don't think the Chiefs are going to have a great answer for that, pre-snap motion and just all the different stuff they've been doing with him. So I do think he's going to be a sneaky X factor, and the kind of where, if the Bills can have a ton of success, I think it's getting him going and making that Chiefs defense really have to overthink to everything he's got going on.
Nice answers, especially drawn up on the spot. It is way better than both of my answers, where I was just going to say the Bills win this game if they score more points than the Chiefs. Just kidding.
True. No, yeah, you can't argue with that one.
It's science, man. You can't argue with the math. You have been, as advertised, as I had hoped, a phenomenal guest. As I mentioned, the chat was loving you. So in-depth, knowledgeable, personable, everything. Dude, I appreciate you coming by so much, and the kind words you had for me and the brand and the insight that you offered. And just in case people don't know, let everybody know what you do, where you are, where they can find you, what's your sign, if you like long moonlit walks on the beach, what your favorite drink is, all that kind of stuff. Pick your poison, whatever you want to do, man.
Oh, man. Well, so excuse me as my voice cracks here. I'm blushing. I'm flustered by all these nice things you're saying about me. So I work for KCSN's KC Sports Network. You can go to kcsportsnetwork.com. We have a handful of writers, ex-players and stuff like that. We have a podcast. The best way I can describe it is it's going to be like a digital radio show, but we're also going to present you like a newsletter that goes along with it. We have shows going up every day on YouTube, podcasts. We're just trying to be everything. If you ever interested in Kansas City sports at all, you got to check out KC Sports Network. Right now, it's mostly Chiefs, but hey, that's about to change this next year. You can find me on Twitter at Chief in Carolina. Right now, I'm still going to be talking Chiefs Bills, and I'm not going to lie to you. I've got a lot of Bills fans listening. So most of what I tweet out for the next couple days is going to be very pro Chiefs and very anti-Bills. I do not mean anything by it. I just got to, keep my fandom up. I want the Chiefs to win. But as soon as this is over, either way, a lot of draft stuff. I love the draft. So anytime I can plug the chance to talk about the draft, we do a draft guide for the Chiefs specific draft guide, but there's a lot of draft content that comes through KC Sports Network that can be applied to everybody. So if you like the draft, I can't say it enough to follow any of the guys involved with KCSN right now, because there's going to be a lot of draft stuff coming out from there. So whatever happens in this game, when the Chiefs move on to the championship game and you guys, got to unfortunately start looking forward to next year, we got you covered with draft stuff too.
How dare you? You were doing so well for so long, and then you just had to ruin it. No, but well-versed, you're versatile. We talked before it offline, us at Cover One respect the hell out of what you guys do, myself, and especially Eric Turner all the way at the top, speaks so highly of you guys. And yeah, you guys do great stuff. And like I mentioned in the beginning, if you want to stay up on the Chiefs and be able to know your enemy a little more, give Matt a follow. Give that whole KC Sports Network team a follow. They're tremendous. And then you get some other added sports bonuses and football bonuses and anything and everything. And I'm glad to hear how much you love the draft. I definitely noticed it in your Twitter bio before we interacted. I'm huge into the draft. Once this season is over, of course, after the Bills win the Super Bowl, of course, we will be pivoting towards a draft focus here. So, maybe I'll have you back. We'll talk some draft stuff, go over some prospects, look at some things, and, maybe see each other again down the road.
Oh, awesome. Again, thank you for having me on. I'd love nothing more to come back and talk draft. That way I don't have to pretend to, be like, oh yeah, the Bills are so cool. No, we can actually get along when we start talking about the draft.
That'd be fantastic. I don't have to pretend that I don't hate you and then I just want to reach through the screen and punch you in the face. That'd be awesome.
Man, just go black.
Dude, yeah, right. Just go black. But dude, seriously, you were amazing. I appreciate the hell out of you for powering through and coming on, man. Thank you so much. And best of luck to you for everything. And I can imagine we will be circling back up again to do some more work together. I appreciate you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Good luck. Everybody enjoy the game this weekend.
Thanks. You too, man. Later. I say it every time I have a guest. I'll say, what a tremendous guest after, but another tremendous guest in the long line of fantastic guests. One, again, I want to mention the hospitality of you guys. I appreciate the kind words for Matt. John, I appreciate your super chat donation, saying fantastic guest. I appreciate the other super chat donations that I got from you guys. I know I didn't bring up a ton of comments while Matt was speaking. I didn't want to throw him off rhythm, but you guys are fantastic, tremendously hospitable to Matt and appreciative of his work. And he's a great dude. Their team is great, genuinely. And I'm going to pull up another thing that's part of a great team. You guys know the drill at this point. Who is this show sponsored by? Sponsored by One Pie Pizza. Switching up the overlay now that I'm riding solo for the back quarter or so of this episode. Check out One Pie Pizza. Find them on Twitter at One Pie Pizza WNY. The online menu can be found in the episode show notes, whether you're watching here on YouTube, whether you are listening on any one of the podcasting apps or platforms. You can find the online menu for One Pie Pizza. They are fantastic. A delicious sweet sauce pizza, pie, homemade blue cheese, quality over everything. They don't have the widest variety of a menu because they believe in doing a small amount of things, and they believe in doing those small amount of things to perfection and to a high quality degree. That's what they are. They're great people. They make great pizza. They make great food. Give them a shout. Give them a checkout. Open Monday through Saturday, 11 to 8, or until they sell out. They will be open this Sunday for the Bills game. Pre-orders are a must because last weekend for Saturday, they sold out. They will sell out. That's how high in demand they are. They're fantastic. I love their partnership. Go get yourself some One Pie Pizza. We're keeping this train rolling. Great episode, a great guest, a great sponsor. Now we're going to hit on some things matchup based for the Bills and the Chiefs here that I want to just go over with you guys before we start to close out on this show. So we're going to be rolling through the back quarter part of the show. And as always, I love to get your thoughts, questions, comments, concerns, anything like that. So whatever you got, throw it into the chat. I'll bring up as many things as I can. As always, not just because of, monetary things, but super chats always catch my eye. I'll pull those up immediately. Those are guaranteed to get in, but I try to get to any and every single comment. So start throwing stuff up in the chat. Let's have a conversation. Likes, dislikes, thoughts, questions, comments, concerns, worries. What matchups are you watching for? What concerns do you have? What advantages do you think the Bills have? Oh, this one just popped up. driving up from Little Rock for this game. That is dedication. Bills Mafia is everywhere. Nice to see that we will be coming up strong for this one. That's awesome. I see John says something about Vlad. That's funny. Vlad says the Chiefs can start talking draft on Monday. Well done, Vlad. Well done. I appreciate you as always. I got to go back to this other comment from Zach. Zach says, Ant, is the tree lit up for all the white jerseys? No, it's just switched from the Christmas theme and went with a little like New Year goldish white theme. But if it goes in line with the all white jerseys, I'm down for it. But it's more just kind of like a New Year gold, maybe a championship type gold that's on this tree. But it's more of like a New Year type of thing before the big tree comes down. I should say over there. Damn it, I'm always terrible. Before the big tree comes down, goes away for the year, and then the little tree goes back to that side. But I want to talk about some matchups, some specific things that I'm worried about in this game. And the first thing for me, it's going to be the Bills' pass defense versus the Chiefs' passing offense. I don't think it's any secret. Patrick Mahomes is really good. Tyreek Hill is really good. Travis Kelce is really good. I've said it on Twitter. I know multiple people said it on Twitter. I know people in the chat have said it. Nicholas is already one step ahead of me here. Nicholas saying, how did we use Trey last matchup, and how do you think it's going to affect coverage this game? We're going to talk about that, Nicholas. I like where your head's at because that's where we're going here. So I like what the Bills have done since Trey has been out, even against Tampa Bay, who I know they didn't have Antonio Brown, but they still had Godwin and Gronk and Mike Evans. That was the biggest test this secondary has faced since Tre'Davious White has gone down. The biggest test to date will be the Kansas City Chiefs offense, the speed, the route running, the complicated offense and scheme. And here's a big thing that I found going back to watching the first Bills Chiefs matchup, and it ties into what Nicholas said. A lot of what the Bills did in week 5 against the Chiefs, they were so versatile. They were so multiple in their coverage schemes on the back end. All jokes aside, they disguised coverage really well, showing 2 high looks and then dropping into single high, showing man and then playing zone, showing 2 high and making you think it's going to be cover 2, and then it was quarters, playing different games based on what the Chiefs were doing. They were adjusting and reading, reacting in real time. If the Chiefs went motion, if the Chiefs went to an alert, the Bills adjusted right in real time. A lot of those adjustments had Tre'Davious White matched up in certain scenarios where, say you had a 3-by-1 set and you can trust Tre'Davious White to be one-on-one with the single side receiver, or Tre'Davious White lined up in man-to-man coverage on Tyreek Hill or Travis Kelce. You don't have that anymore. And I know the Bills coverage has been good since Trey has been out, but the Bills have not faced a test like this since Tre'Davious White has been out. The speed of the Chiefs' weaponry is legit. It's real. Their route running, their concepts. That's my biggest thing for this game going into it, especially with what the Chiefs like to do, right? So the Kansas City offense, as Matt mentioned, they love 11 personnel. So 66% of the time they are in 11 personnel, meaning 1 running back, 1 tight end. That is the 8th most in the NFL. They run motion on 62% of their snaps. That is the 2nd most in the NFL. So let's stick with that, right? So you're going to see a lot of 3 wide receiver sets. You're going to see a lot of motion. They're going to be playing games. They're going to be maneuvering guys in order to gain leverage and be able to attack different spots. They're going to be maneuvering guys in order to try and figure out what the defense is doing. There's a lot of pre-snap activity for this offense, and they're able to do so much of it because of their level of sophistication and understanding of this offense. So you're going to see a big test from this offense. And then overall, they are 3rd in DVOA on offense, 3rd in passing DVOA, 10th in rushing DVOA. One area that they've struggled a little bit that I was surprised, the red zone. 22nd DVOA in the red zone, 18 for the pass, 19 for the rush. For me, it really starts with that coverage piece, right? And a part of it also ties into the run game a little bit. Like Matt mentioned, if the Bills are getting gouged in the run and they have to commit more to the run, that leaves them more vulnerable on the back end. The Bills cannot afford to not be sound on the back end because they're not going to be able to commit more. I got to stop what I'm saying. Why? Because John is fantastic. 1, John, thank you very much for the super chat. 2, I'm going to read your comment now, and I'm expecting it to be awesome because your comments are always awesome. John says, fun stats. Dawson Knox has 16 touchdowns the last 21 games. Okay. Diggs is 1-0 versus the team that beat him in the AFC championship last season. Tyreek and Kelce were 22 for 290 in the AFC Championship game last year. 22 catches, 290 yards. We can't do worse, question marks. Chiefs are dead last versus play action. Bills number 1 using play action. You know what I like? Oh, and John clarifies Knox has 16 touchdowns in his last 21 starts. What I like about John, and what I appreciate about you, John, is I like people who bring stats and conversational topics to the show, because that means I don't have to bring as much. And then you get to bring stuff and I get to read it and I get to think about it. We get to have a conversation, and it's like free content that gets brought to my door. It's like, instead of having to make dinner myself, you just dropped off a delicious meal at my doorstep and I get to eat the meal. So I appreciate your super chat. I appreciate your comment. Let's talk about that a little bit before I get to, finishing my matchup thought. What Kelsey and Hill did last year, a lot of big plays. The Bills got gouged a lot. What I think is really interesting in this game, especially from a coverage perspective, right? So Tre'Davious White is out. Matt Milano was in. Milano and Edmonds have been functioning so well together this year. Despite what a lot of people want to think or make you believe about Tremaine Edmonds, he's had a very quality year, especially in coverage. He is such a big deterrent in the center of the field, and is the reason the Bills' center of their defense has been so good and sound in pass coverage, right? I am a little worried because of the man coverage piece, right? Like, I don't think, again, they did it in week 5, right? They varied up. Oh, John, never apologize for interrupting. John says, didn't mean to interrupt. And again, as long as no Patriots, I'm good. Let's go. Never apologize for interrupting, John. I appreciate the hell out of you and everybody watching live. Never apologize for a super chat or a comment, anything like that. I appreciate you guys being here and riding live with me. So never apologize. You're awesome. Yeah, Timothy says you just angered the Edmund haters. Yeah, I anger Edmund's haters all the time, but I watch film, so film don't lie. And I also take a look at advanced metrics and statistics, and I combine it all to add context. So it is what it is. But, with what Trey did, again, like I mentioned, so the Bills varied up their coverages. They had zone, they had man, they had 2 high, they had single high. They brought different pressure looks. They did a whole bunch of different things on the back end, right? I could literally spend an entire episode, hour long, just talking about the versatility and multiplicity and coverage that they showed against the Chiefs, right? And they had to. You have to against a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes, who we talk about his arm and his mobility and all that stuff, but his ability to diagnose pre and post snap is huge, right? And so you have to be able to disguise things. You have to make them think that you're going to get A and then throw them B and vice versa, all that kind of stuff. We used some looks in week 5 that were man coverage looks, or whether if they weren't man coverage across the board, they were man coverage for Tre'Davious White. And that's not a matchup that I like. I don't like Dane Jackson or Levi Wallace in one-on-one coverage with Tyreek Hill or Travis Kelce, or honestly, maybe even Mecole Hardman. Dane is very much a zone functioning corner. He's very good with his zone eyes. He's good in leveraging space. He's good in understanding how to function in his coverage role. He's got plenty of experience in the coverages the Bills use from his time at the University of Pittsburgh. It was almost like he was bred to be in this defense, as was Damar Hamlin, rookie safety for the Buffalo Bills from the University of Pitt last year in the draft. So I think Dane is well equipped. I think Levi Wallace is better than people know or people appreciate. He's had a good year this year. That being said, I don't want either of them lined up one-on-one against Hill or Kelce. Even with Tre'Davious White. Tre'Davious White's one of the best corners in the NFL, and he at times would struggle with Kelce and Hill. So if he's struggling, I don't want either of those guys necessarily all the time, right? And I think that's where missing Trey is going to hurt. I think you're going to see more zone coverage on the back end. And when you combine that with trying to win certain matchups and being able to have, okay, I want this guy on this guy. We want to bracket this guy. We want to play this coverage against here. Someone is going to be stressed and strained more often than not. And when you've got 2 corners that you still have to protect a little bit, good thing for the Bills. They've got Milano, they've got Edmonds, they've got Taron Johnson, who's fantastic, and they've got the best safety duo in the entire NFL with All-Pro Poe and All-Pro Micah Hyde sitting back there at the safety spots, right? That helps a lot. But that's the biggest thing I'm looking for. If the Bills have to allocate more resources to help out Dane Jackson or Levi Wallace or even Taron Johnson, if they have to allocate more resources to the passing game, that means 2 things. 1, it opens up the run for the Chiefs. 2, it means Patrick Mahomes is already succeeding. And the last thing the Bills need in this game is for Mahomes and this Chiefs offense to start feeling themselves early and getting into a rhythm, getting that whole crowd lathered up, getting them ready. Like Matt mentioned, right? They're up for this game. The Chiefs fans are up for this game. You know how much Bills Mafia is going to be inside Arrowhead. That's going to piss the Chiefs fans off. They already know the winner of this goes to the AFC Championship. They know both the fans and the Chiefs, they know the Bills walked into their house in week 5 and stomped them. You know they're not going to let that happen again. And then you add a little potential weakness like Tre'Davious White being out. There's already some blood in the water, and you combine it with all the emotion and the hostility and the intensity. That's a matchup. That is my number one matchup to watch. The Bills passing defense versus the Chiefs passing offense. And again, let's not sell the Bills defense short. First in DVOA against the pass, 11th in DVOA against the rush. Again, like I mentioned, they are versatile and multiple. 119 snaps in cover 1. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. 119 snaps in cover 3. 101 snaps in cover 4. 66 cover 2 snaps. They are able to do it all on the back end. And a lot of it is because of Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer, right? Their ability to show 2 high looks and spin and rock and roll into single high looks or vice versa. So multiple, so versatile. And it's a big thing. Also, another big thing, I want to mention one more. Aaron Quinn from Cover 1 put out some really good down and distance DVOA stats that I had some notes on. And this is a big one too, right? Getting the Chiefs into 3rd and long scenarios. By 3rd and long, I mean 3rd and 7 yards or more. The Bills defense is 2nd in DVOA going up against 3rd and 7+ situations, right? The Chiefs offense, 25th in 3rd and 7+ yard situations, right? You wouldn't think that was a thing with Mahomes' arm and the potent ability of this offense. You wouldn't think that would be a struggle, but it is for them. 25th in DVOA in 3rd and 7+. So get the Chiefs into 3rd and long, kind of like what the Bills did against Mac Jones. I'm not comparing Patrick Mahomes to Mac Jones, so let's not get it twisted, but win on 1st down, win on 2nd down, force the Chiefs into 3rd and long, get after him a little bit. Also, some things that I wanted to mention on Patrick Mahomes. He was pressured the 4th most in the NFL at 232 pressures. 12.1% of those pressures were converted into sacks. Josh Allen's pressures converted into sacks was 10.6 for the year, so Mahomes isn't too far off. 40.2% of his passes have come from 0 to 9 yards. 21.8% of his passes have become behind the line of scrimmage. 18.1% have come in the intermediate, 10 to 19 yards. Only 10.5% of his passes have come 20 yards or more. But here's the kicker. He has, on those 20 yards or more passes, he has 16.1 average number of yards gained per pass attempt. So when he connects on 20 yards or more, and he did it almost 50% of the time, he was 34 to 73, a completion percentage of 46.6%. But again, so 34 completions for 1,177 yards, 9 touchdowns, 2 interceptions on throws 20 yards or more downfield. So when he did connect, it was lethal. And that's what we expect from this Chiefs offense, right? They'll go deep. They'll stretch the field. They might not hit it every time, but when they do, it gouges you, it gets you, and oof. Jason says, I think you can throw all these metrics and stats out the window come playoff games. I get what you're saying, and I know it's like a matchup league, but the tendencies and who these teams are still present. Now, they may try to break tendency, and they may try to play off your ability to know what they're going to do, right? And see what Zach says there. Zach says, not those metrics, but it sort of tells you what you know. They're a killer on the long ball. Knowing these advanced metrics, they tell you tendency, right? And they let you know, okay, how does this team fare in this type of situation? What do they like to do in this situation? And even as much as a team wants to break those tendencies and they know that you know their tendencies, who a team is at this point in the year, that's who that team is, right? Even the Bills have developed a pivot a little bit, but they're not all of a sudden going to become a triple option team against the Kansas City Chiefs. Who a team is who they are at this point. These advanced metrics combined with the film, that's the big piece too, right? All the film study that I do, I use the advanced metrics to combine with the film study to be able to put that whole picture together. So I get what you're saying, Jason, because the playoffs are a different beast. They're a different animal. And it's, win or go home. But there are certain things that put things into perspective and let you know what a team is and what they are about. Let me go with some Carl's comment here. Carl says that in the first 5 yards where it's legal, the Bills need to get physical with Travis Kelce on every snap to throw him off his route. I love that. And he said, key to 1980 is Olivia Newton-John soundtrack. Well done. Well done. Let's get physical. Well done. An oldie but a goodie. Solid gem. Well done, Carl. And you're getting a lot of love. You're getting a lot of love from the chat. Oh, comment from Braxton here, who's a Chiefs fan. Braxton says, as a Chiefs fan, can't wait for this matchup. If the Bills come out and play like they did against the Patriots and the Chiefs defense comes to play, it's going to be a hell of a game. I think you're spot on, Braxton. If the Chiefs keep rolling like they have, both offensively and defensively, same thing for the Bills, this has the potential to be the game of the year. The stakes are high. The players are going to be juiced up for it. The coaches are juiced up for it. And you combine that with the skill on both sides and the schemes on both sides. Yeah, this has game of the year potential for absolute sure. And that also makes me nervous. Question here from Narhem123, along with a super chat. Thank you very much for your donation. I appreciate the hell out of you. And thank you for riding with me live on this episode. His question is, or her question is, do you think the Chiefs defense matches up better against our offense than the Pats defense? Yes. Mainly because of the more speed that the Chiefs have on defense, but also the Patriots defense is not, despite the fact that it's a Belichick coach defense, they're not really built to beat the Bills, right? The Bills defense feasts on man coverage and they feast on single high looks. That's the reason you saw Isaiah McKenzie win so much in week 16 and why you saw Dawson Knox win so much in the wildcard game, right? The ability of the Bills to take advantage of those matchups on the inside, whether it's Miles Bryant on Isaiah McKenzie or Kyle Duggar on Isaiah McKenzie or Jawan Bentley on Dawson Knox. The Patriots play, again, a lot of man coverage and a lot of single high safety. Those deep crossers are fantastic against man coverage, and they're fantastic against single high coverages. And that's just one little piece, right? When you combine it with the whole scheme, I don't think the Patriots defense was built to stop the Bills offense. They don't match up well with what the Bills do. And you combine that with like their skill sets, they're thumpers, they're physical, they are versatile, but they're not built to run with the Bills like that. And I think you saw, again, that Monday night game aside with all the crazy weather, I think you saw in week 16 and then in the playoff game how the Bills offense can really operate. It's no fluke that the Bills didn't punt in either of those games. And I know the week 16 game, they didn't punt because they went for it on fourth down. They didn't even see a fourth down in this wild card game. And I think that's a testament to how the Bills are built, combined with the fact that the Bills have a running game now. So no, I don't think the Patriots defense was a good matchup. I think the Chiefs defense matches up better with the Bills offense. I will say that I still don't think the Chiefs defense is a good matchup for the Bills. I think there's matchups they can exploit. So I still think it's a plus matchup for the Bills offense. But if I was a coach and I had to pick a defense to run against the Bills, if it was going to be the Chiefs or the Pats, I'm going to pick the Chiefs. But if I could take one player, I'd want to take JC Jackson and move him from New England and put him to the Chiefs. But I take a sip of water real quick. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that super chat donation. I appreciate you very much. Let's see what else. Just seeing some he who says that Chiefs defense is faster than the Patriots defense. That is true. Oh, and really nice comment from Sophia who says, I'm learning so much with your awesome analysis and data. Thanks so much. Thank you for being here. And thank you for the comment. I appreciate the kind words. What else? Comment from Jason. Can Devin Singletary get 100 yards? Absolutely. And I think, I'm not going to say he needs to get 100 yards rushing in this game, but Devin Singletary needs to be a factor. The Bills' run game needs to be a part of this game. The Bills are not going to come out and just pass it 55 times out of 70 plays and win this game. They need to have a run game. I like what John mentioned earlier in his super chat, the Chiefs' defense against play action versus what the Bills do with play action. Josh Allen's good with play action, especially coming out of under center, especially combined with the different looks that the Bills can have coming out of from under center, and then combined with the personnel packages and formations and everything they can do. I think this run game needs to be a part of the Bills offense this game. I think Singletary and this gap scheme run from the offensive line has been tremendous for this offense. Get physical with Kansas City, beat them up, run the ball at Chris Jones, run the ball at Melvin Ingram and Frank Clark, make them have to get dirty, make them have to expend energy in the run so they're not able to do it as much against the pass, and then be able to have play action, different personnel formations, be able to stay multiple and varied. I think Devin Singletary needs to be a factor in every single game, in the run game, in order for the Bills to win a Super Bowl. So can he get 100 yards? Yes. And I would say not that he needs to get 100 yards, but he needs to be a factor. Ron bringing it back to the Patriots game, saying we took advantage of their slow but linebackers. We did. Right off the bat, Dawson Knox matched up on Jawan Bentley on a deep over. That's a mismatch of the Pats, and that's advantage Dawson Knox all day. Comment here from Jason. Jason says, I think the Chiefs will really try to mix it up and be less predictable than the Pats on D. Hopefully Josh can read and diagnose early and we can get Chris Jones blocked up. That's a huge one for me as well, right? The ability to block Chris Jones. It leads into my second point a little bit, or second matchup that we're going to go over here. But yeah, Chris Jones cannot be allowed to be a game wrecker on the inside. Interior pass rush destroys any quarterback. It's more deadly than outside pass rush. You don't want to see it. So if Chris Jones has himself a day, it's going to be rough for Josh and the Bills offense. And yeah, I think the Chiefs are going to mix it up. Like Matt said earlier, Steve Spagnuolo is going to bring everything in his arsenal and in his bag into this game. You're going to see creative blitzes. You're going to see creative coverage schemes. You are going to see varied coverages from play to play and down to down. It's going to be a tough game mentally, in addition to the physical piece, because the Chiefs have some talent on that side of the ball. It's going to be a mentally taxing game for this Bills offense based on what the Chiefs are going to do. GH says it's interesting. Your guest said McKenzie will be the X factor. I think he is for a lot of people. You see that explosive nature that he has and that gadgetry piece, especially in today's NFL, where like guys like Deebo Samuel have become such weapons. And you have a guy like Isaiah McKenzie, who's not Deebo Samuel, but you can line him up in the backfield and give him tosses and run outside zone or RPO with him out of the backfield. You can line him up in the slot and he can run away from defenders in man coverage. He can run short routes and get yards after catch. He can run swing passes. He can do a variety of things. And he's got something you can't coach, which is, sorry, I'm shaking my whole computer here. He's got something you can't coach, which is speed. And speed is lethal, especially in this Bills offense that doesn't have a ton of long speed and doesn't have a ton of yards after catch potential. McKenzie brings that. But I do think it was interesting, yeah. Oh, Ron's question here. Ant, what do you see being the key for the Bills offense? Player, plays, etc. Ron, I am so glad that you asked that comment because it leads into my second point, and I'm going to answer it right now after I go through. Oh, awesome comment here from Marissa. This is what I wanted to get to. Marissa says, last game was the Taron Johnson breakout game. He needs to do that again, only allowing 1 first down over 10 targets. I agree. Taron Johnson has to be a strength. Dane Jackson and Levi are what they are. Taron Johnson cannot be any type of liability or weakness. The interior needs to be strong. Tremaine, Milano, and Edmonds. We need Taron to be solid in coverage. We need Taron to be solid coming up and making plays in the run and blitzing and affecting everything around the line of scrimmage. So strong game from Taron Johnson would also go a long way. Awesome comment here from Andy. Andy says, I rewatched the KC game from week 5 and the game was closer than what the score was. I completely agree. There were a lot of plays that Kansas City left on the table. And some of it is due because, the Bills put them in those situations. But some of it was KC just not executing. Patrick Mahomes missing throws that he normally makes, receivers dropping balls. There were plays there to be had, plays where the Bills defense was beat and defenders were taken advantage of, and the Chiefs just didn't make those plays and didn't execute. And again, you have to give the Bills credit, for forcing them into those situations. But I think there were several scenarios where the Chiefs weren't forced into any scenario and they beat themselves. It's hard to bank on that, right? For another game. That's tough. So good comment there from Andy. What else? Seeing some comments here about the run game, about McKenzie, all this stuff. And all right, cool. I'm going to go into, Andrew says, side note, did you ever explain Super Saiyan to Aaron and Greg? No, I didn't. I was a little disappointed that they didn't know what Super Saiyan was. I'm not going to lie, especially because I got, Vegeta right there crushing his scouter, saying over 9,000. So I was a little disappointed, but no, I didn't mention it. I'm going to take a drink of water, and then we're going to go into my second biggest matchup for this week. So bear with me. All right, second matchup. Ron, you mentioned it earlier in terms of, I want to pull your comment up there. What do you see being the key for the Bills offense, players, plays, etc.? The key I see to this Bills offense, well, one, I want to preface this, right? The Bills offense is still Josh Allen. It's Josh Allen centric. This offense and this team will go as far as Josh Allen takes them, right? But I think what you have to do on offense is lighten the load as much as possible, make things as easy as possible on Josh Allen. In order to do that, you need good pass protection. Thank you. My wife brought me water. She understands me. You need good pass protection, and I think you need a run game, right? I think the Bills' ability. Oh, also, Braxton, I see your question here. What's your opinion on the Chiefs defense, underrated or just inconsistent? I'm going to get to that in a minute. I appreciate you being a Chiefs fan and still riding with us here on the show and asking, really informative stuff and bringing good detail and not being a troll or awful. So I appreciate you, Braxton. Thank you so much. I'm going to get to that in a minute. Good call. This Bills offensive line, since Ryan Bates has come in, has been a strong unit. They're still giving up more pressures than I think people realize. So Ryan Bates took over in week 16 in that Patriots game. Weeks 1 through 15, Josh Allen was pressured on an average of 13.9. He had an average of 13.9 pressures per game. Since, as Vlad says here, trenches, and trenches. Since Bates took over in week 16, and we've had that line of Dawkins, Bates, Morse, Williams, Brown, Allen's been pressured on an average of 11.3 snaps per game. So almost 3 pressures less a game, but not a huge drop. The pass protection is succeeding because they're doing better up front, but it still comes down to Josh Allen's pocket manipulation, right? But the big thing for me with the offensive line is, again, that ability to run the ball. And that is what I'm looking for on the offensive side. So this Bills run offense versus the Chiefs run defense. This Bills run offense, again, has been a revelation to me, honestly. Weeks 1 through 13, 27% gap runs, 67% zone runs. Weeks 14 through 18, 48% gap runs, which is the 5th most in the NFL, and 48% zone runs, which is the 28th most. So barely any zone, even though it's 48-48. Most teams run zone. So they're running gap runs at the 5th highest usage rate in the NFL. They're running zone at basically like the 4th lowest usage rate. They have transformed into a gap run team. In the wild card game against New England, 54% gap runs, 2nd most out of wild card weekend, right? Tie that into Devin Singletary, who has been killing it. He is the RB1 for the Bills at this point. First 12 games, 408 snaps, an average of 34 snaps per game, and only 1 game with more than 60 snaps. The last 5 games, 306 snaps, 61 snaps per game, 4 games with more than 60 snaps. And you take the wild card game into consideration. Josh Allen, he had 53 snaps. Devin Singletary had 48. Devin Singletary basically did not leave the field, right? He is the RB1. This Bills rushing attack is what I'm looking at. And Ron, you nailed it. The changes to the O-line made them much more physical. They are punishing defenders. And that is exactly right. This Bills offensive line is suddenly, with the addition of Ryan Bates and Spencer Brown into the starting lineup, right? They are athletic. They are physical. They are mean. They are nasty. They are mashing linebackers and defensive linemen. That's a huge piece, right? Again, it's this pivot. The Bills are still going to be a passing offense. They're still going to be a Josh Allen offense, but having a pivot, you need to have a pivot. It does not matter how good your fastball is. You want to have your number 1 pitch be great. It's good to never lose your fastball. It's good to have that fastball, but you need an off-speed pitch. You need a changeup or a curveball or a slider. You need to throw some breaking stuff in there. You need to vary your location. You can't just throw the same pitch in the same location over and over again. That's what the run game is for the Buffalo Bills now, right? They have that pivot. They have that off-speed pitch. Got to pull up this comment from Andrew. He says, wow, more likes than peeps. Nice work. That's awesome. I don't know how many likes there are for this video. I can't see it right now at all because of where we are. Likes are tremendously important towards helping myself and this team at Cover One track and trend in front of more eyes. So if you're here, drop a like. If not, drop it on your way out. I know it's corny. Please drop a like. Also, rate and review and subscribe to Disguise Coverage. Drop a rate and a review on Apple iTunes. That's awesome. Subscribe to the YouTube channel here, to myself and to Cover One as a whole. It goes a long, long way. I appreciate you guys so much. Got to disrupt myself. Got a super chat from Eric. Eric says, Anthony, it seems like we're suddenly pretty good out of heavy formations. Do you agree? And why is it suddenly working? I do agree. Nicholas, right above you, his comment says, speaking of blocking, Gilliam with exclamation points. Yes, we are suddenly good out of heavy formations. And it's because of how the Bills have leaned into this gap scheme run. So gap scheme runs, I'm talking about powers. I'm talking about counters. I'm talking about pin and pulls, blocks where you've got down blocks occurring, and then pullers, whether it's a guard, whether it's a tackle, whether it's Mitch Morse, the center, whether it's Reggie Gilliam, like a fullback, H-back, tight end type look. Talking about physical runs where it's like, hey, we're running between the guard and the tackle. Hey, we're running between the center and the guard. Hey, this is the specific hole. We have to move these guys out of the hole and attack. Let's mash some people, get physical, move them out of the way, right? These heavy formations lend itself to that style of run. So you've got heavier formations. You've got Reggie Gilliam and Dawson Knox. Dawson Knox's blocking this year has been phenomenal. We talk about his receiving. John mentioned it earlier in his super chat. He's got 16 touchdowns in his last 21 starts or games, which is unbelievable. His transcendence in the passing game has been big, but his transcendence in the run blocking game has been huge. He's moving defensive tackles out of the way. He's pinning defensive tackles. He's pinning linebackers. He's pinning defensive ends. He's cracking down. He's driving guys out of the hole. He's meeting guys downfield and driving his man 5-10 yards upfield. The blocking from these heavy formations, yeah, I agree. It's been very good. And I think it ties in again to being versatile and multiple. When Matt mentioned it earlier, right? If you're in 11 personnel, so one running back, one tight end, there's only a certain amount of stuff you can get to. You're limited in terms of what you can do in your pass protection and what you can do in your run game. You can only run a certain amount of things. That's why outside zone pairs so well with a spread offense, because you can run a lot of outside zone and zones in general, but especially outside zone off of 11 personnel like that, right? So that's why the Chiefs do that. When you go heavier, when you've got different alignments and personnel, it allows you to stay varied and multiple because you can get to more things. You can run zone, you can run gap and power and all this kind of stuff, right? So I think having these heavier formations keeps defenses off balance. I think that's why it's working. It doesn't allow you to just know what's coming and guess, right? Because if a team comes out in 11 personnel, you can honestly, if you want to play the odds, you can kind of be like, well, it's either going to be a pass or it's going to be a zone run. Boom, done. Right. And maybe you'll get somebody who can run pin and pull and gap and different stuff like that. But working out of these heavier personnel formations allows you to be multiple and varied. But two, why is it also suddenly working? The Bills are suited for it to run gap scheme, especially out of heavy personnel, because that's it too. They're using heavy personnel to run gap scheme, right? And the reason it's suddenly working, because the Bills are built for that. To run gap, you want physical and athletic linemen. The Bills have it. Ryan Bates, Spencer Brown, Mitch Morse is tremendous in space. He's awesome at pulling and getting out in space. Darrell Williams isn't bad at it. It's not his strength, but he's decent enough in moving. Deion Dawkins can move. Reggie Gilliam is fantastic at pulling and getting out in space. He's athletic. He's physical. He's nasty. So it's more tied to what the Bills are doing out of these heavier formations, right? So it's not just the heavy formation itself that is working, it's what they're doing out of those heavy formations and what it allows. But yes, it is working, and it's tremendous. And again, it continues to tie into, whoa, that's fantastic. Nicholas says there's 100, well, at the time there was 192 people in here and there was over 265 likes. That's fantastic. And I didn't even mention to people to drop likes. This is awesome. I'm kind of at a loss for words. That's awesome. Thank you for letting me know that. And see, this is what it all ties back to. The comment here from William, who says, when the Bills offense is balanced, it's the best in the league. That's what it is. And balance doesn't necessarily mean perfect balance. It doesn't mean 50% pass, 50% run. It means maybe like 60% pass, 40% run, maybe 65-35, or just in simple terms, running the ball enough that defenses have to honor it, to the point that when you run RPOs, right, run pass options, like the Bills did with their second touchdown to Dawson Knox against the Patriots, or like the touchdown to Gabriel Davis against the Patriots, when you run those RPOs and you show that run action, the linebackers come up, the third level defenders and the safeties, maybe they come up, and all of a sudden you've got openings in the center of the field. You've got openings downfield. That's why the run game is important. One, in and of itself, if you can get yards running the ball, it's easy, it's nice, it wears out a defense. It's also soul-sucking. It sucks much more for a defense from a mentality standpoint to get dragged up and down the field when a team is running right at you and running it down your throat. It crushes your soul. It takes your soul. So it's easy to get yards that way, and it's nice to crush the other team's mentality. But it also makes things easier for Josh Allen, makes play action work that much more, makes the RPO game much more effective, because now you have to honor the run in the RPO. You can't just be like, no, I'm just going to sit in coverage and make Josh Allen keep the ball and throw it. No, you have to respect the run, because the run is a real threat. This Bills run game is huge for us. And looking at the Chiefs defense, they are 22nd in power success. I mention this stat all the time. So power success is the percentage of runs on third and fourth down that get a first down or a touchdown. It includes runs from first and goal and second and goal from the 2 or closer. It's mainly like a measure of like short yardage success on third and fourth down, first and second goal. So from a defensive perspective, it's a measure of how often do you allow the offense to be successful. The Chiefs are allowing a success rate of 70%. That is 22nd in the NFL. And they're also 26th in stuffed rank. Stuffed rank is the percentage of snaps in which you tackle the running back at or behind the line of scrimmage. The Chiefs are only making tackles at or behind the line of scrimmage on 14% of runs, which is 26%. So I also mentioned a stat earlier, 72% of the Chiefs snaps this year have come with 5 or more defensive backs. Add in that it's 60% of the time they are in a light box. That means 6 defenders or less in the box. So majority of the time they got like 4 down linemen and 2 linebackers. That is the 6th most in the NFL, right? 60% light box rate. They have a 31st, someone all over my words here. 31st, yikes, I did it again. 31% 7-man box rate, which is 9th in the league. So 91% of the time, they've got 7 men in the box or less, and 60% of that time, they've got 6 or less. They give a light box. They're not the best at stopping short yardage. They're not the best at making tackles at or behind the line of scrimmage. Run the ball, make them commit to the run game. And if not, keep attacking them with the run. Keep mashing them. Keep churning out easy yards. Also, ball control, right? If you're running the ball, you don't have to worry about incompletions. Keep churning out the clock. You're gaining yards. You're scoring points, hopefully. You're keeping the ball away from Patrick Mahomes. So it's dual, right? Dual purpose. Running the ball, a successful ground game, allows you to be varied and multiple on offense. It allows you to have a pivot for Josh Allen in the passing attack. It also keeps the ball away from Patrick Mahomes. It also tires out the defense. It does so many things. And I also think it's a really good matchup the Bills can exploit. I know what Matt said, where he doesn't like the matchup of Ward one-on-one with Stephon Diggs. I would agree. I think the Bills have an advantage in their periphery and in their weaponry. But I like the Bills' advantage in the run game, especially with what Chris Jones can do in the pass rush game from the interior. Like Matt said, he's not the strongest run defender. Run it at him. Every single play. Down block him with Darrell Williams. Down block him with Spencer Brown. Pull Ryan Bates and mash him in the hole. Vice versa. Reggie Gilliam, Dawson Knox, I don't care who it is. Beat him up. Get physical. Get nasty with them. The run game is my second most important matchup to watch for. So first is that Bills pass defense against the Chiefs passing offense. Second is that Bills run offense. I think, again, the Bills will go as far as Josh Allen takes them. But the run game has been so key to this Bills run. And it was key last week. A lot of what you saw was success in the run game against the Patriots, and then success in the play action and RPO game because the Patriots had to honor the run because how good the Bills were with the run. It's tremendously important. If the Bills can have success on the ground, they'll win this game against the Kansas City Chiefs. That is my thing, right? I asked Matt, if the Chiefs do this, they'll win. If the Bills do this, they'll win. Mine for the Bills. If the Bills can run the ball effectively, they will win this game. It's too hard to defend this Bills offense if they can run and pass, right? It's just too much to have to play both sides of the sword. Not to mention it keeps the ball away from Patrick Mahomes. What other? Oh, I wanted to get to that comment from as we start to wind down here. I'm trying to find it. I know it was from Braxton. There we go. Braxton, the Chiefs fan. He says, what's your opinion on the Chiefs defense? Underrated or just inconsistent? I think they're underrated to a degree. I think people still see them as the defense that finished overall in 24th in DVOA, 23rd in DVOA against the pass, 20th against the run. Weighted DVOA, though, they were 13th. They played better down the stretch. I know they didn't play a ton of great teams, but I think they're better than you give them credit for, or than a lot of people give them credit for. They've got studs on that side of the ball. Chris Jones is a stud. Tyrann Mathieu is a stud. I like Juan Thornhill. And you've got a well-coached unit. You've got studs on that side of the ball, again, who are well-coached with good scheme. And from a defensive coordinator, Steve Spagnuolo, who has seen everything and done everything and is well-versed and had tons of success at the NFL level. So you've got that working for you. And I also think, not that, play that card, I think a decent amount of the Chiefs' struggles on defense was them just kind of being like, we don't want to play regular season games. We want to get to the playoffs. And once that playoffs come, let's flip the switch. Let's dial it up and change things a little bit. They've earned that from my perspective. With the success they've had in the playoffs, going to back-to-back Super Bowls. What they've done, they're still the kings of the AFC. And when that happens, you get complacent sometimes in the regular season. So I don't think this Chiefs defense is a top unit. I don't think they are a dominant defense. I don't think they're a top 10 unit. They're not a defense that I look at and I'm like, oh, we got to play the Chiefs defense. But I think they are both underrated, and I do think they're inconsistent. And I think a lot of it comes from who they were missing earlier, the teams they were playing, and the mentality they had. So I think they're better than people give them credit for overall, but they have been inconsistent. What else? I want to pull up a couple more comments. Awesome comment again from Ron. Our O-line has been playing downright mean. They punish anyone in front of them. Vlad says, how good or bad is the Chiefs' run defense? I go to DVOA for everything. I think it's the best metric when comparing things for people. And I mentioned some of it there. 20th in DVOA against the run. And like I mentioned, 22nd in power success and 26th in stuff run rank. So not tremendously great, not a complete liability, but they are a unit that can be run on. Zach says, I think Gilliam was the plan all along. Before last week, the KC game was his highest snap percentage. Brian Dable has been great, as I take a drink of water here, at adjusting week to week and developing game plans and scripts and modes of attack based on his opponent's weaknesses. And that's been tremendous. He's doing it game to game. He's doing it drive to drive, quarter to quarter. So yes, Gilliam was a design weapon in that one. What? Steven, you don't know. Steven says it's kind of late to still have that Xmas tree up. Yo, my man, you had no idea. This one is just for the holidays. This little guy, he stays up all year round. And I decorate him with different garland and ornaments based on what the season is. So come Valentine's Day, you see a bunch of hearts, a bunch of red garland on that guy. Come St. Patrick's Day, you're going to see a bunch of green. Come Easter, you're going to see pastel, yellows, and blues. You're going to see tons of stuff. 4th of July, red, white, and blue. October, tons of Halloween stuff. The tree stays up all year round, Steven. So welcome to the show, my man. Oh, appreciate you, Eric. I'm glad you like my insight there. What else? I like this comment from Streeter. Dable is going to unleash the fullback vertical again this Sunday. I like that. Andrew says, how does the threat of a solid run game affect Spags' aggressive play calling tendencies? It could affect him in two ways. One, he might have to bring more run blitzes, which could then, if the Bills run play action or if they pass, turn into just regular blitzes. But it makes him have to honor the run, right? That's the biggest thing. It makes him pause in terms of his coverage schemes, in terms of his coverages, in terms of his play calling, because he has to honor both parts of the game. He doesn't have to just worry about Josh Allen. He has to worry about the run game. So it changes his mentality in terms of how he attacks. Last questions here. Ron, Ant, do you see us using a lot of motion to help Josh identify what's coming at him? Yes. I think motion is great for pre-snap identification. I also think the pre-snap motion allows you to set up your guys to get leverage. Like the Devin Singletary second touchdown run on that counter tray, they bring McKenzie in motion, which allows him to get outside leverage on that corner and get better blocking positions so that Singletary can choose a hole. So I expect to see more motion out of Gilliam, McKenzie, Dawson Knox, Singletary. I expect to see a lot of motion from this Bills offense. And motion is key in today's NFL. McVay runs it. Kyle Shanahan runs it. I expect to see the Bills do that heavy again against Kansas City. And if they progress in these playoffs, continue to do that. And last comment here from Eric, he says, we also seem to pass pretty well out of heavy. Yes, we do. That's because we have guys who sell play action like Dawson Knox, and we have personnel that'll make you think it's a run, but boop, we drop a pass instead. And that's all part of keeping defenses off balance, being able to make teams think it's going to be a run based off of your personnel, your alignment, and your play call, and then flipping it to a pass. Josh Allen's great at hiding the ball. He's a magician with play action, turning his body, showing sleight of hand, making you think that he's handed the ball off, and really he's still keeping it. So yes, they pass and run. Both of those things they do well out of heavy. And that was also a good question. And you know what? For that, I know there's so many more comments here, and I wish I could get to everything like I always do, but I think I'm going to have to start winding down on this one for two reasons. One, I'm starting to cough a lot. I don't know why, but I'm starting to cough a lot. And so that's a sign that I should probably stop. We've been going for a long time on this episode. And I appreciate you guys so much. This episode has been tremendous as always. The live chat was jumping as it is again, which I hoped for based on how big of an important week this is. So, awesome comment here from Zach. Zach says, I'm saving my other comments for the Cover One Slack. It's awesome. Cover One Premium membership, man. It's one of the best things you can get. We're in there all the time. The knowledge, the conversation, it's basically just like having a text message group with everybody at Cover One, not to mention all the people that are signed up for it. A lot of awesome conversation from content creators and people who just love the Bills and love football. So it's awesome. And Ron says, great show, brother. I appreciate you. Man, all of the things coming through. Sophia says, top shelf as always. Eric says, awesome stamina, man. Nicely done. I appreciate you. John says, thank you. I appreciate you guys. Appreciate me. Thank you so much. And yeah, with the toodles, thank you guys so much. Whoever told me how many likes there were, Nicholas, I think you told me that. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate you guys so much riding with me live here on this episode. The chat was awesome. This whole episode was great. Big thank you to Mr. Matt Lane from the KC Sports Network. Go give him a follow. Check out his work. Again, I know it's mainly Chiefs based and it's KC Sports based, but they do a great job and he does a great job. And if you like football, their content is fantastic. And I keep pulling up all these positive things from you guys. Thank you guys so much. And if you are listening to this episode later, watching this episode later, whatever have you, thank you very much for your view. Thank you very much for your listen, your download, whatever. I appreciate you guys so much. I wish I could possibly, again, put into words how much I value everybody that supports myself and this entire Cover One team. So thank you guys so much. If you haven't dropped a like already, please do. It goes, like I said before, a tremendously long way in helping myself and the entire team track and trend in front of more eyes. Please rate and review and subscribe to Just Guys Coverage. Drop a review on Apple Podcast. It goes a long way. Again, tracking and trending, get in front of more eyes. Subscribe to This Guy's Coverage on YouTube. Subscribe to Cover One as a whole. We are the best in the business when it comes to Buffalo Bills coverage and general football content and knowledge in general. We break down the game in a way that not a lot of other people do. The lengths that we go to, the education piece, the learning piece, I think we're top notch in terms of what we do. And I don't care if it's content creation or professionals on big national networks. Not a lot of people do it like we do. Not a lot of people bring it like we bring it. So rate, review, subscribe. Cover One, Disguise Coverage, please and thank you. I appreciate you guys so much. And, that's an awesome comment. This is my first time coming across Disguise Coverage. Great show, my guy. I appreciate you. Thank you very much, man. Way to drop that very much. Jonathan says 1,000%. 1,000%. Well done. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I appreciate you guys more than you could possibly know. Thank you very much for riding with me on this episode. For those of you just still chilling here on Wednesday night, go get a drink. Maybe take a bathroom break. You got the Cover One preview show coming up with Greg Thompson and Aaron Quinn coming up at 9 o'clock. So go recharge. Got a big show coming up at 9 with those guys. They do great work. Huge game this week. Guys, still several days away. Strap in, relax. We got a lot of time. It's going to be hopefully a great game. I hope you and your family and friends and loved ones are all doing well and you're all staying safe. Take care of one another. Look out for one another. Hope you all enjoy your week. I hope you all enjoy this Bills game. I will see you next week. And as always,